What's up, fam? Hit that like, hit that subscribe, share this video. Here we go. Another edition, A2D Wednesday night. Let's go.
Uncle Sweep snicked.
I mean, how silly is that, man? We're talking about practice.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.
Hit the wrong promo. That's a good start.
I didn't know where I was for a second. I didn't know where I was.
What's up, everybody? Another edition of A2D Wednesday nights. That's Michael Mataraki. That's Luke Brown. I'm Greg Milakovic. We're here to hold you over for the next hour or so tonight. At the end of the show, we'll get into a little Eagles talk. Training camp starts today. It is what it is. We'll talk about it, right? We'll talk about it. But the main topic at hand and the majority of the show is going to be the Phillies are free falling.
We're gonna do this, huh?
We're gonna talk some Phillies. Obviously, trade deadline coming up in a couple days, in about a week, right? Next Tuesday's trade deadline. So we're starting to get hammer into more and more names are coming out, but also the Phillies are also playing into absolutely having to make a move, right? And before we get started, every Wednesday we are brought to you by Baggio's Bread, located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, home of the best stuffed breads, tomato pies, sandwiches, and cutlets, meatballs. Mention A2D Radio. Google them. They got a new location. Their food is dynamite. But Google them. Get 10% off when you mention A2D Radio. Gentlemen, the poll question for today, the upcoming trade deadline will be the wake-up call the Phillies desperately need. Sorry, I couldn't even say it, and I worded it. Do you agree or disagree? Fan, chime in. Let us know. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days. We're there live. Gentlemen, I'm going to disagree on this. And I'm going to disagree because we're not trading the whole roster.
Right.
We're not getting 3 new bats. We're not getting 3 new relievers. We might end up with 1 and 2, right? 1 each, 1 here, 2 there, right? Regardless of where it is. And not to be, as I joked earlier, not to be drastic free fall, but the last 4 or 5 series have not been good baseball. And I understand it's a long season, and I understand we played at such a high clip at the beginning of the year that this downturn was bound to happen. You just hoped it wouldn't continue, right? I looked at last night in that 9th inning, that comeback last night, that win, that game that you probably, again, shouldn't have won, was hoping to roll over today. And then you watch today, we're 0 for 8 in the first 2 innings, or 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position, just leaving drives of people on base. So I look at this as a little deeper of an issue, and I hope within the next week, we come back here next week and we're talking about them being on a 4, 5, 6 game win streak, right? But I don't think, while I think one move or, moves here and there are going to help, I think the wake-up call has to come sooner, and I think the wake-up call has to come is deeper than just adding and or subtracting a couple guys. What do you guys say?
So I am also going to disagree. I don't think this is a situation if you want to jump into the Wayback Machine where the Phillies traded Bobby Abreu and Corey Lytle to the Yankees for basically what amounted to a couple of buckets of balls. And that became addition by subtraction. And all of a sudden that team went on a run and just missed making the playoffs. But that sort of set the tone for, what we got in 06, 07, 08, and then that really long stretch of, as the Sarge likes to say, continued success. Their wake-up call has to come from within. I do think they need to trade for bullpen help, and another right-handed bat in the outfield certainly would be great. I mean, we've talked about this at length. The reason that I am nowhere close to the panic button yet is if I look at the standings, and I'm not even talking about the National League East. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry will look at the National League East and say, They're up 9 on the Braves. They're up 11 on the Mets. There's no problem. And that's fine. That is factual information. What I do is I look at the other divisions. They are still, I think it's 3 games up on the Dodgers and 5 games up on Milwaukee for the overall number 1 seed in the National League. Still have the best record in baseball by a bunch. I think, Greg, to your point, what we're seeing is just a little bit of leveling out because they played at such a high clip during the first half that this was sort of bound to happen. I think the other reason that I am not ready to panic is if you look around the league, if you look at that column in the standings, the last 10, it seems like everybody is coming out of the break and they're all 4-6, 5-5, 6-4. There's a couple of teams that are hot. There's a couple of teams that are in the toilet. But it seems like the entire league right now just has this all-star break hangover. So, and look what happened to the Phillies. You know, they had that series at home against the soon to no longer be Oakland A's. They won the Friday night game and basically just packed it in for the break. You know, they had 6 guys go to Texas, and then they went right from Texas to Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh to Minnesota. Some of these guys haven't been home in 2 weeks. So, you know, I really just think
That's a good point.
They came home this afternoon. They get a day off at home tomorrow. They start a home series Friday night. Let's flip the switch and get back to doing what we do.
What say you, Luke?
Yeah, I guess Full House disagree.
No.
Yes. I was going to bring up the same.
I like it.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing about looking at the rest of the league. I'll take another angle, though. I think the wake-up call, kind of going to what you just said, is going to come from within. I'm going to rely on those leaders. I'm going to rely on what we've talked about this entire time being the upbringing of this team, the ascension of this team has been the clubhouse. That's what we've talked about. Can this clubhouse overcome this or that? Maybe an alternate personality they bring in. All these kinds of people that these guys want to bring in here.
Are you hinting at a particular alternate personality?
I'm just throwing it out there. That's all.
Because I happen to like that alternate personality, and I wonder why they haven't kicked the tires on him already.
Who is this? I'm kind of lost right now. Who is this alternate personality?
Luke?
I mean, we were talking about it last week. We'll save it for the names. We'll save it for the names. I just wanted to say,
keep me teased up over here.
I think the trade deadline will help a lot, especially now that we're seeing, I wouldn't say holes in the bullpen, but maybe just like, hey,
they're holes.
Yeah, all right,
they're
fine.
Holes.
We'll call them holes. So I think the deadline will help a lot, and you got to trust Dombrowski in that role as always, like he's done this entire time. I think it'll help, but if you want to look at the wake-up call, I'm going to go back what you just said. Internal leaders, clubhouse, they step up in those moments. And again, to your point as well, no reason to freak out right now. The standings are just as they were before they started losing. They're totally fine. I'm not freaking out or anything like that. And also, let's be real. I know we were kind of gloating about it last week about the record, but let's be real. If we were being honest, what team in the history of baseball has gone the entirety of a year without being like, you know what, maybe we need this or that, or who knows? So they play 162 for a reason. Let's calm down.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and both of you guys have mentioned it. It is crazy when you look at it, right? We're in this funk, and we're still 2.5 games up on everybody. Like, they're still best record by 2.5, 3 games, and it's not like, Baltimore or Cleveland or Baltimore, whoever's next. It's actually Cleveland. Ironically, they come to town. It's not like they're like a game and a half, game back, half game back. Like we still clear them, as you said, Mike, pretty well. And then as you dove into the other divisions, Milwaukee's about to lose Yelich for the rest of the year, right? Potentially. He's potentially going under the knife. So they're potentially due for a downturn as well. So, yeah, it's going to be crazy. And I'm with you guys. There's no full panic mode over here. But, like, today's loss is unexcusable. today's loss can't happen. Aaron Nola nuts his way through 6 innings, and you give it to that bullpen who's supposed to be the top, if not number 2 bullpen in baseball, and they can't hold a 3-run lead. And Brandon Marsh has got to catch that baseball. I don't care if your right shoulder is hurt, or if your right shoulder's hurt and you can't throw the ball. Well, you know how to not throw the ball? Catch the damn ball. That was unexcusable. Twins are crafty though. Twins are probably been my second team just because I got family out in Minnesota. So I kind of pay attention to them, but there's no way they should have taken 2 out of 3. Not with the pitching lineup that we had out there. Right? We go into a series with Ranger, Wheeler, Noah. You expect 2 out of 3, if not a sweep.
Right.
That's got to happen, especially coming out of what this team has done so far this year is when they've struggled, they've gotten themselves out of it. Right? They lose 2 or 3 in a row. Hey, boom, let's go on a 4-game win streak. Right? Let's go on a 5-game win streak. So far right now, since the Braves series, we haven't done that. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to look at that series and just say, okay, the opener, Ranger got outdueled by a guy who threw the heck out of the ball. Okay, it is what it is. I mean, the final margin 7-2. We know what happened. The bullpen basically gave up garbage runs at the end. They get the win yesterday with Wheeler, as they should, and they beat one of the best closers in baseball. And then he come back today, and I'm waiting for the Nola haters to come out with blaming it on him today. When, as you said, he nutted his way through 6. He leaves with a lead, and the bullpen again. I mean, and it's just becoming just glaringly obvious that if there is a big hole, it is the bullpen. But I want to go back to something, Luke, you had just talked about with the guys in the clubhouse and the veteran leadership. And Greg, it sort of relates to the thing you were talking about Brandon Marsh. I can almost guarantee you, either in the clubhouse after the game or on the plane on the way home, either Schwarber or Harper went and sat down next to Brandon Marsh and said to him, that ball's got to be caught. You can't be afraid to run into the wall just because you're hurting. And if you're hurting that badly, you need to take yourself out of the game.
Get out.
Because that was what he did today was selfish.
Rojas and or Pache, whoever's playing left at that point, probably would have been Pache.
Yeah,
catches that ball.
Yeah, I mean, and
that's not glaring praise for Christian Pache,
right?
But
I mean, it's to me that was, at least to my recollection, that's the first time this year that somebody on that team got a little selfish, tried to do too much. I mean, it was obvious early in the game that he was hurting and he shouldn't be in the game. And he refused to come out. And I do think if he's not thinking about his arm, he catches that ball. And if he does, it's an entirely different game.
Yeah, 100%. Let's roll through a couple comments here. Andrew Baker chimes in. Casual say they're still 9 games up on the Braves and everything goes K. We hold this team to a World Series expectation. Andrew, I think both can be true, right? We can still look at the standings and say, hey, yes, we are still holding strong above the Braves and still hold them to a standard, right? I think both can be true within the same comment there. But yes, I think they haven't been playing very well.
Yeah, and I think we also looked at the standings beyond the Braves. I mean, we basically kind of chalked up the East, and we started looking at the other division winners. So
yeah, absolutely.
To Andrew's point, it is absolutely about the World Series, and that's why we're looking at where we stand against the other division leaders, not the Braves and the Mets.
100%.
Mets
Tommy,
are
what up, brother?
Hey, Tommy. Mets are 7-3 in their last 10, and they're still 11 games out. I'm not worried about them.
Yeah.
Though they will wind up leveling off too. We just got to get this team right.
Yeah, and the Mets too, to that point, Mike, they're in a scenario where in the next week they got to make a decision whether they're going for the wild card or they're selling. Yeah. And right now they do hold one of the wild card spots, so you would have to think that they're not going to sell.
Right.
But they have to make that decision pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think they're on this stretch right now where I feel like this is their hot stretch for the season.
Right.
And they're going to peak and they're going to fall off. I don't think this Mets team is built to make any kind of run.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beating up on a broken down team right now that has no pulse, no health, nothing going on for them at all.
Tommy, for you and everybody else who's just joined us, the poll question tonight, the upcoming trade deadline will be the wake-up call the Phillies desperately need. You agree or disagree? We all went disagree on up here.
Well, what does it exactly mean? Like a wake-up call of what?
Just the downturn of play over the last losing 4 out of 5 series, the loss today kind of encapsulating the recent stretch of play.
Like, does Dombrowski have to make a splash move at the deadline to try to wake his team up? Something like that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, I know teams go through funks and all that. It's baseball. Like, I'm in it every day, right? But like, this is not okay, right? They're not hitting. They're not getting the pitching they need in big spots, right? It's like it's something every night. When they were winning, it was something every night of somebody picking them up, right?
Right.
And that's what was so special about this team. Now, there's ups and downs in the baseball season. It's ebb and flow, right? So, like, in no way am I like panicking and being like, this team's not good enough. But they need a wake up call. Like they absolutely do. They need. Like, I'm going to continue to say it now because we've seen it. They need a lights out guy at the back end of this bullpen, right? They need an official closer at the back end of this bullpen. And honestly, they could probably use another bat. Now, I'm not as worried about the bat as I am about the pitching, right? You need to lock all windows and doors at the end of games, and they haven't been doing that. I think the hitting will be fine. Like, I don't get caught up in that. I could do without Harper bitching and moaning and complaining. Like, if you want me to be honest with you, like, I could do without it. You know, I think you stranded like 50 runners, over the last like 2 weeks. So stop making it. It's not everybody else's fault, babe. All right. When you're struggling, everybody wants to point fingers. Okay. And I tell you, I keep it real with Harper. I love him to death, but I could do without that. I could do without like umpires are human beings. We get it. They're not the reason you lose baseball games. Okay. And it's from a guy who will ride you to death if I need you. But they're not the reason. Like, they're not the reason. Like, I tell my guys, like, they're not the reason we lost the game. Like, if they're bad both ways usually. So you lost the game. So I could do without that today. I could do without, like, we're going to point fingers. No. We know what leaders do, which he is. I get it. I'm not saying he's not. But leaders are accountable, right? Be accountable. We're not playing good baseball. We have to play better baseball. It's as simple as that. Don't start doing this, right? Because that's when other guys in that locker room were like, wait, who are we blaming? You know, so that's my thing. And I agree to the poll just to be different than you guys to make it fun. They need a little bit of a wake up call.
They do though. We all went just it was coming internally, like it wasn't necessarily going to wait almost to the deadline. That was where most of us went.
Like, they need to wake up internally, you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, like somebody like a Schwarber or a Real Muto needs to stand up and kind of like a come to Jesus with.
Yeah, you think I mean, listen, I love a guy like Mason Miller, but he's not going to come in and like, it's not going to be like flip a switch and now we're playing great baseball again. No, I mean, that needs to come from this lineup. That needs to come from this pitching staff, right? And to their, and give them a little bit of a pass. I mean, they're finally starting to get healthy again. But this was a tough loss today. It's a game they had to have. You're up 4-1 in this baseball game. You can't lose that game. Mm-hmm. And that just goes back to the back end of this bullpen and Rob not having a dude. Like, he has dudes, but he doesn't have a dude.
Dude.
Yeah, you need a guy at the back end to say, or high leverage, like, this is my guy I go to. And Alvarado hasn't been good enough. Gregory Soto hasn't been good enough. So there's some of my concerns, right? Where it's like, those guys aren't locating. Both got great stuff. So, I mean, yeah. I'll agree again, just to be different. I think they need some sort of something different in a way, right? It's like anything different in any sport can like change what you're doing. I don't know. I'm reaching for that, but
yeah, no, I hear you.
So I want to get Tommy. I want to get your opinion on something though, because we talked about it right before you.
Breaks gets out of hand.
We talked about it right before you got on. I want to get your opinion on this, because I feel like today with Brandon Marsh, we saw the first sign this year of a guy being selfish, trying to do a little too much. And if he was that hurt that he couldn't go get that ball in left field at the end of the game, he shouldn't have been in the game. And I'm kind of the opinion that a Harper, a Schwarber, a Real Muto kind of needs to lay into him for that and maybe make a little bit of an example of him of, we don't do selfish things like that. And if you're hurt, get off the field.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Kind of want your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like if you're hurt, you shouldn't be playing, right? If you can't give it 100%, like I didn't see the play, right? So, but if you can't give 100% on a play because you're banged up, now you're hurting your team. And there's being great teammates, what Brandon Marsh is. We know he is.
Yep.
But then there's like being like, and again, that might be trying to be a great teammate, right? Like, hey, I want to play through it. I want to be tough, right? But there's the other side of it. Like, if you can't give it 100% because you're not fully healthy, then you're hurting your team and you're essentially being a bad teammate, air quote, right? So there's two ways to look at that. But I couldn't agree with you more, Mike. Like, and maybe playing cards tonight, good time to tell the guy like, yo, if you ain't good to go, say to something. Now I'm gonna circle back on Marsh and Stott real quick because Rob Thompson, I'm not firing Rob Thompson, but what he's done with those two is fireable. I'm just going to continue to say that. It's flat out fucking fireable. I'm tired of it. Sorry for the language, but it needs to be said. Like, stop pretzeling young players, right? Stop messing with their brains. Like, let them play. Like, now stop batting against lefties. Like, okay, we're doing this. Like, the guy's in a rut, and look what's happened over last year. Like, he has a baby, right? His life's changed, right? Mm-hmm. Mentally, that can be different for you. So, like, the only way you get better off of lefties is seeing more lefties. Like, so that's my biggest gripe with Rob Thompson is what he's done with those two kids, which I'm not a fan of.
Tommy, you are a shrewd man because I think you hit the nail on the head with something there. Look at what happened last year with Trey Turner. Came to a new city, wife had a baby, couldn't get it going. City got behind him, gave him the whole big standing ovation thing. Boom, he catches fire. This year, Bryson Stott, playoff hero last year, has the baby before the season, hasn't been right all year. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's time for this city to lift up Bryson Stott and put him on their shoulders and say, hey, you're our guy. We got your back.
I couldn't agree more, Mike. That's such a great point. It's such a great point. Like, why are we not rallying around the young player that's a big part of this organization moving forward, or we can do what Brink wants to do. We can sit him down and start Sosa every day. That's why I got. I wouldn't do that.
No, once a week, I'm good, right? And the one thing to give credit to Bryson is he's still playing Gold Glove second base, right? You can use that same analogy with Nick Castellanos too, right? Even though they're struggling at the plate, Nick's been hitting well recently, but generally they don't take their at-bats to the field with them. They are still locked in defensively, and especially Bryson is playing a Gold Glove caliber second base. So we got to give credit and understand that baseball is played two sides of the field too.
And it's not like these guys are hitting $195 either. I mean, are they hitting to where we think they should be hitting? No, of course not. But I think Castellanos is at 240, Stott's at like 236. I mean, these guys are 1 10-day hot streak away from salvaging the season. Both of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Tough run coming up, Johnny. That's for sure. Johnny also says they haven't played well since London. The LA sweep was against an injury-riddled team. Well, we've been injured all year too, Johnny.
Everybody gets injured.
You know what I mean? We've been injured all year.
That is true too.
Wilson, we're fine. He wants Mason Miller. And then we're really fine. A couple of ugly losses recently in the bullpen due to regression. I'm more concerned with the walks, which is a big factor.
Absolutely. They're not getting hit around. They're just, they're walking too many guys. They're walking too many guys, and then they feel like they got to throw one right down the cock, and then those are the ones that get hit.
Yeah. I wouldn't hate Hoffman being the closer, but I think you go out and make a move. That's the biggest need is the bullpen, so then Hoffman can settle into another role. But he's fine. Hoffman hasn't been the issue. It's Alvarado, it's Soto, and Kirkering over the last couple of weeks. I don't think, to Jeff's point, I don't think Kirkering needs to go down to the minors because there were stretches even just a week ago or 2 weeks ago where he was fine. But he hasn't been good recently, so I do understand that and give you that.
But here's my thing with Kirkering, and maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but wasn't it the other night the first time in his career he's given up more than one run in an outing?
I think so.
Even his not so good, it's really not that bad comparatively speaking. I mean, you look around the league and you look at some of these other bullpens. The Phillies bullpen is struggling, but I mean, there's a lot of garbage in some teams' bullpens out there right now.
Yeah. Bruce is worried about Cleveland. Of course he is. I mean, Cleveland's good, Rob. Cleveland's good, but we haven't been home for 2 weeks or a week. And some of these guys haven't been home for longer than that with the All-Star break, right? You think of the 6 guys who went to Texas and then right to the road. So we're coming home. We should have the pitching advantage. We have Sanchez, Phillips, and Suarez, and they bring in 2 ex-Phillies, Ben Lively, Carrasco, and Chef Curry. What's his first name? Xavier Curry. So it's not like they're throwing studs at us either, right? So get us some home cooking, sleep in our own beds. It's just over 10 o'clock, so we'll keep that other extracurricular stuff off the
Yeah.
But let's get some home cooking, get in front of these fans. I don't see why 2 out of 3 isn't doable, even though Cleveland's a really good team.
They're going to straight up torch Ben Lively.
I would hope so.
I mean, I actually liked Ben Lively when he was on the Phillies, but they're going to just straight up torch him. And then, everyone wants, win streaks and sweeps and this and that. Just give me 2 out of every 3.
Just get back. We've lost we lost 4 to 5, so
you don't need
give
to
me
win
a win.
12. You don't need to win 12 in a row. You need to win the one in front of you. And then do it again the next day. That's it. Take 2 out of every 3.
Yeah, Michael, he said kind of red flag Minnesota had their best players out of the lineup this series. The only one they were really missing is the kid because he's always hurt. Why am I blanking on his name? Royce Lewis. Oh, was Correa out this?
Correa was out,
too?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but Correa hasn't been hitting that well.
No.
Correa just provides them defense. But their best player is, Royce Lewis, but he's always hurt, so you can't count on him. He'd probably be the best player in baseball right now if he wasn't hurt.
He always hurt.
He's always hurt.
Correa at this point is just a name.
Yeah. But I guess, Michael, to your point, yes, we still should have won the series, right? We should have won today's game, and that is completely unacceptable. Luke, what do you think of the upcoming series? Can we get a series win, 2 out of 3?
I mean, you know me. I'm looking at the Yankee series right now, and I'm looking way ahead. But that pitching matchup we got, I mean, we got
some good ones in that series.
Wheeler, Nola, and Sanchez are all going up, and Garrett Cole's going out, Gill's going out, and I forget the third one. I think it's Nestor. Yep, Nestor's going out there. So that should be interesting. But you're also talking about a team that has no answers, and which is funny to me because they did get off to a hot start. They had a best record in baseball at that one point. But kind of to Mike's point earlier, as low as the vibes are right now with the Phillies, and they're low, and especially here in Philly, they tend to get that way. But looking at the rest of the league, these other teams are in such deep shit going into this deadline that for me as a Phillies guy, how could you be overly concerned? I get it that there's things you want to touch up on. I totally understand that. But at the same time, they are still in better position than still today every single team in baseball. I don't even think it's close because you can bring up the Dodgers and the health. One thing with them, they're not healthy and they play that pretty boy baseball. That's not going to win in October. It's just not. You saw it firsthand. That wasn't the pitching that was the problem. I believe in that 4th or 5th inning, the Phillies got like 3 infield hits in the same inning, all because they don't care to field the ball. They want those big money hitters. This might come back to hurt me. I'm not really worried about them. I'm not. So I'm not worried about anybody right now. Touch up on the things that you want to touch up on, but no reason to be overly concerned.
I love that, Luke. Because
Dave
you know
Roberts
what
the
today
loser.
is?
Yeah, Tommy was waiting for that. Yep. That was where I was going.
Dave Roberts.
You know what today is?
What's today?
Today is Overreaction Wednesday.
Here we go.
And it's the day after Overreaction Tuesday, which is the day after Overreaction Monday. Because it's always an overreaction in Philadelphia.
Always.
So Luke, you're spot on, dude.
I'll tip into some baseball.
All right, fam. We are. If you think the Phillies are going to take 2 out of 3 from the Yankees, and where am I at? Hold on. And the Cleveland Guardians coming into town starting on Friday. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, share the show. We are currently at only 11 likes here on YouTube. So that is just as unacceptable as Brandon Marsh dropping that fly ball today. So hit that like, hit that subscribe, stay with us. Let's get it back into a little bit of trade talk. And I want to bring up a couple names outside the ones that we've already over talked about, right? Outside of the Lou Bobs, the Mason Millers, although they're still all on the table, right? The Randy Rosarenas. I think it's a really hot name. Tommy, I know you've been on him a long time. I think Tampa Bay might be a good landing spot because they also have a couple names of a couple other guys I want to bring up. But what are you guys' thoughts? Obviously, Washington's out of it, right? We've talked Lane Thomas before, but what if you went with a little bundle package, Lane Thomas and Kyle Finnegan for the bullpen?
I'm good with Finnegan, but is he a back end guy or is he?
He is right guy? Now. He is. He has struggled, right? Let's be honest. He's on the Nationals, so it's not like he's pitching in a whole bunch of high leverage situations. But he is currently career. He's serving as a closer and is having a career year, whatever that means, right? I don't have his stats up there, but it was just an article I was reading, so it was a new name. New name popped out. I'm like, oh, let's look into him a little bit, right?
So obviously I love
pitch back end.
Yeah, I love a Rosarena. I love Lane Thomas. I've been on those two guys for a while. Finnegan's a great name. I just don't know that I'm giving up X to bring Kyle Finnegan in here as a closer. Kyle Finnegan as a closer does nothing for me. Kyle Finnegan as a setup guy, now we're talking.
Well, yeah, I think kind of to that point though, Mike, you're just looking to add bullets, right? You're looking to add options to that back end, right?
I think you just have to make sure that Washington doesn't overvalue him because he's serving as their closer just because they don't have a legit closer.
Sure. Currently this year he's 2.32 ERA in 44 games, 28 saves.
Greg Freeze.
I was going to say, does Greg have Florida internet again?
Florida internet. Of course, I drop out right through there, right?
Yep.
Perfect timing.
Last thing we heard was 44 games, 28 saves. He froze again.
It's amazing. I don't know if he's talking.
Oh, goodness. I think he's punking us now.
Well,
he's gone.
Maybe not.
No, he's gone. No, I got to do something I don't want to do.
Luke, what do you think about that? About Lane Thomas and Kyle Finnegan?
I'll just leave it at this in terms of confidence going into the deadline. I was just going to say, this isn't the Sixers we're talking about. This isn't the old Flyers we're talking about. Going into this deadline, albeit they're at some lows right now, right? But albeit going into this deadline, I have full confidence in the organization's ability to evaluate not only where they are now, but what they need to get better. They are so good at that. Ever since Dombrowski's gotten here, they are so good at that. So it's nice to talk names right now. And I remember last year, everyone was talking names too. Lorenzen never came up. And while he wasn't maybe the right move now, they had all summer to make the big move, and they didn't. So I trust them going into this another portion of the year where they can get better. Everyone's looking to get better. I trust them more than any team in the city to evaluate that correctly.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with that. I mean, Dave Dombrowski has a big-time track record with that kind of stuff, so I couldn't agree with you more. And I love Howie, but, you know, we love what Howie does, but Dave obviously has probably even a bigger pedigree than Howie on that side.
Howie's the offseason genius. I think Dave is the guy who, you know, in season is going to make that, you know, that tinker move that gets you, you know, 2-3 more wins and put you over the top. So I
that's Daryl Morey too. That's Daryl Morey. All these off-season moves are pretty and whatever, they get in the headlines, but these in-season moves are what brings home titles. I've always said it, I look at the team that beat the Sixers back in 2019, that Kawhi shot year. People forget Marc Gasol was not on that team. They traded for him right at the deadline. And that was, if they didn't have him, we were running right through him. That won him a championship.
Yeah, that's fair.
You're right. You're right. John says, if I'm the A's, I would out for a bunch of players, and then the Phillies need a closer. So unless they overpay, I'm just not handing Miller over.
And that's smart. I mean, that's absolutely smart.
Yeah, of course. Like, you know, I mean, the A's aren't a great organization, but, you know, you want to capitalize on a guy with that kind of value. I mean, if you're not, then that's why you're the A's. But, you know, we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole concept of Moneyball that the A's pretty much invented is making sure that you get high value for your young players.
Yeah, I mean, especially when they're moving too, right? Like when they're moving, they need those guys to be able to sell moving forward, you know?
Well, and let's not forget, I mean, the A's are essentially the team without a home next year. They're playing in a minor league ballpark, but 2 years from now, they're moving to Las Vegas. And if they need a superstar to build around, I mean, because we know they're not going to be a great ball club. But, I mean, if you look at the way that Las Vegas does player introductions for, like, Knights games, Golden Knights games, and you know, the Raiders games, could you imagine I'm assuming they're going to call them the Las Vegas A's, and the absolute fanfare, walk-in music / Las Vegas cabaret show that they will have when Miller comes into games in that new stadium, in that new city? I mean, they're not, to John's point, they're not going to just hand him over, because they're going to need something to put people in the seats there in 2 years. And if he's the guy, you know, if the A's can position it as, hey, if we get to the 9th inning with a lead, that's when our stud comes out to play and we make a show of it, you know. Yeah, I mean, they're not going to just give him away. There's too much on the line for that.
Yeah, no question about it. Kyle says they don't need a big name closer. Thompson just needs to use what he has better in the bullpen. Hoffman is the closer, hands down, and everyone else accordingly. You agree with that?
I do agree with that, but if Thompson doesn't want to use Hoffman as the full-time closer, then they got to go out and get one.
Right.
It's one of those situations where if Thompson was willing to use Hoffman and Hoffman just wasn't getting the job done, you know, that's one thing. Just the fact that he's not willing to commit to Hoffman as a closer full time tells me that they need to go out and get one.
Yeah. Absolutely tells us that, right? Like with all of them, you know, he doesn't commit to any of them really.
But is that validated though? Like, because my perspective is when I watch these games and they blow him, I don't understand why he's not going into every ninth inning. That's why going into this deadline, I don't know if I want that. Obviously, Miller would be great, but I don't know if I want that big personality coming in here now at this point of the season and that big time improvement when I feel like he might already be here right now. I don't know if they need that huge move when I feel like they haven't given him a fair shot.
And that's valid. I mean, Luke, to your point and to Kyle's point, that I mean, it is valid. If Thompson just wanted to say, okay, Hoffman's my guy, he's my ninth inning guy, and I'm going to build around that, I'm completely on board. And he hasn't done anything to not deserve that. But it was one of those things where, I think Topper was doing this cutesy little thing where he was basically looking at the left-right matchups in the 8th and 9th inning against whoever they were playing, and basically saying, okay, I'm going to use Alvarado in the 8th today and Hoffman in the 9th. And then tomorrow it's going to be Hoffman in the 8th and Alvarado in the 9th. And, he was trying to play this cutesy little game where they were interchangeable, but now they're not interchangeable because Alvarado is blown up and Hoffman, if you are going to use him in that, that spot every night, you got to commit to it and do it.
No doubt about it.
Like
all
Hoffman
right, boys.
shouldn't have been in the game in the 8th inning today. He should have been in the 9th.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I totally agree. All right, boys. I just wanted to stop in and say hello. I hate missing shows, but my face is on fire. So I'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, Tommy.
Depending on baby situation, but
baby watch official.
Yep.
It's been official since Tuesday. So here we are. Here we are, circling the tarmac. Probably going to come tonight. So hopefully, let's talk into existence.
Yeah,
fingers crossed. Feel better, brother.
Get her out. All right, boys. I'll see you guys next week.
See you, brother.
Yeah.
Go Phils.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to jump back to Johnny's comment about the A's and holding out for a high cost. I don't necessarily disagree with you, Johnny. I said my only counterpoint to that is Mason Miller has a history of injuries, right? So the longer you hold on to him, you risk obviously losing all leverage in trying to trade him, right? I know the A's, it's come out recently that the A's aren't really wanting to trade him. They do want to start building around some of these young guys. They want to get out of this perpetual suckness that they're in, and they view Mason as that, but I just don't know that they can afford, with his injury history, I don't know that they can afford to let him stay, And that's what a lot of guys currently on the deadline, right? You can say the same thing about Tariq Skubal. You can say the same thing about Justin Steele from the Cubs, right? Lou Bob from Chicago, right? All these guys. Bellinger's the other. Yep. Yeah. All these guys that have a history of being hurt. If you don't trade them, then you assume all that risk. So it's it. I obviously want Miller. I think he's the top guy. I don't know that we get him. But I just wanted to comment as I was in and out of internet. It's so weird. My computer shows complete good, 5 bars, whatever. And then as soon as I connect to StreamYard, it's like, I feel like I'm in Transformers.
It's all right, man. I went back to went back to Tom and Mike mode and just carried.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. And Johnny, actually no storms. We had a storm earlier today, but nothing right now. Jack has Riz. Who do you want in the outfield going? Are you talking about trade, Jack? You talking about just our lineup out there?
Yeah, that's.
I read an
clarification on that.
I read an interview. It was a couple weeks ago, but I read an interview that someone did with Dombrowski, and they brought up Rojas, right? And Dombrowski came out and said, "Listen, I'm not going to critique the guy, mid-season." He said, but he's playing about exactly as we assumed he was going to play. He said, if he ends up with 50 RBIs, 30 stolen bases, a couple of homers, that's what we thought we were getting offensively from him. He said, and then he went into what we were expecting is the defense. He's got to go catch every ball. And when they send him down, he had it. right? That's part of the reason they sent him down. Now coming back into it, he has played a lot better center field. He's done a lot better. I shouldn't even say it after he gets picked off the other night, but he's been running the bases a lot better. And so sure, the bat's always going to be there, but he flat out said he's not in the lineup for his bat.
Right.
And I think most fans realize that, but it's still frustrating, right? Because every time he comes up, it seems like there's runners in scoring
There's
position.
runners on base, yeah.
and we
but you're
and we want to hit.
Greg, you're spot on though. I mean, when he got sent down, that was a wake-up call for him, and it had nothing to do with his bat. It had everything to do with if you need to learn how to be a professional. If you're not hitting, that's one thing, but you can't take that out in the field with you, not at the major league level. And he was doing that.
And it's a shame too, because I think some of the mistakes he was making, it was because he was too fast. Like he was overrunning and misjudging balls early in the season. So Jack has clarified he's talking lineup, left, center, and right. So for me, Jack, I'm going to give you 2, and then we're going to hold out for a week because we'll see what happens. Castellanos is playing right field. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, whether anybody likes it or not. It's kind of irrelevant. It's proven that way, right? Like Rob Thompson's going to run him out every day. And Brandon Marsh is in my outfield for the playoffs. I'm only leaving it open because of the trade deadline, right? If we go get a Rosarena, if we go get, an outfield bat. So where Brandon Marsh plays is obviously up in the air. If we get like a Rosarena, he probably moves to center. Because you're not platooning a Rosarena. You're not getting him to platoon him. And so that's my guy. That's mine. I'll give you 2. But if we stand pat, I'm good with the way our outfield is, right? Castellanos, Marsh, and Rojas.
Luke?
I'm in complete agreement. I've been saying the whole time I want the arm in the bullpen. So that's where my move's at.
So Greg, I'll give you a little bit of a twist on this one. I obviously Castellanos stays. I mean, he has somehow become almost a borderline Gold Glove right fielder, and
he really has.
For me, I'm actually starting Marsh in center and Wes Wilson in left.
Ooh.
And then late game, I'm moving Marsh from center to left and bringing Rojas in to center field for that late inning defense.
I don't hate it, especially if you don't make a move, right? Like if you don't make a move and Wilson's been up a week now, right? But he's had some really good professional at bats, and to your point, I think if you do give him a couple more bats, he maybe starts to find a little bit of a groove. He's probably not playing every day, but at least 2-3 days a week, maybe he can find himself a groove here. That's interesting. I like that. Martian, part-time boss tonight. You know what it is when you're the boss. You can just pull strings. Now he had a tooth removed that his mouth is on fire. We'll leave the jokes out. And yes, Martian.
I don't think you need to leave the jokes out. I think they just write themselves.
Marsh did suck today. And it's also not Dombrowski's wheelhouse to just sit around on his hands. He's going to tinker in some ways. Before I got cut off, we were talking Kyle Finnegan. I don't know if you guys jumped into those stats. He's actually having a pretty decent year. But there's 3 other names I just want to bring up, and then we'll get into some Eagles talk to end the show here. And they're all outfield or relief arms. Pete Fairbanks, and/or Jason Adam from Tampa Bay. And then the third name is Michael Kopech from Chicago. Do any of those names do anything for you guys?
I'm waiting on you, Luke. I do have some thoughts, but I'll let you. I'll let you throw it out there.
I'm Mr. Closer. That's all I want. That's all I need. I'm totally cool with it. And I was going to actually bring up the question because we were talking about it with Tom before he left. How much of this Alvarado Hoffman thing when they go against each other and things like that, how much of this routine is saying finding the balance between, okay, I get it analytically, you do want to match up righties against lefties. But on the other hand, how much of it is it from a Rob Thompson perspective saying to your guys, Jeff Hoffman, every single ninth inning is yours. You bring us home. So that way, in my eyes, I get it. I'm not the baseball guy. In my eyes, that's getting guys more comfortable going into a game. So
Absolutely.
Alvarado's eighth inning, that's yours. And I trust those guys. I'm not like, I get it. Baseball is very, very analytical. I totally understand that. But from my point of view is, if you trust your guy, I don't care who's on the other side. If Alvarado goes into every single eighth inning and owns the eighth inning, and Hoffman goes into every single ninth inning with the trust from his manager, from the fan base and everything, saying, those are your innings, own them. What's the problem with that? Why can't it just be like that?
Nothing.
And
So
and Luke, that has been done for 100 years in baseball, 120 years in baseball. But what happened is the nerds took over,
right,
and started being too analytical about things instead of just saying, as you said, you're the ninth inning guy, right? And that's why you get paid the money. That's why you get a closer salary, because you're the guy. And
I'm not trying to be this guy that compares everyone to the GOATs, but like, there's no way, given the current state of baseball, no one's going to be Rivera ever again.
No,
because no one goes into these games anymore as the ninth inning closer.
And it's all around, right? Unless you have that guy, because you played that way previously, right? You're talking about Cleveland with Clase. You're talking about Baltimore with Kimbrel, and it's just because of who he is, right?
Yeah.
Kenley Jansen up there in Boston, right? Unless you have those old school guys, you are new school analytical. Anybody can pitch the ninth inning. It's just 3 outs.
Right. But the problem with that, and everything you've said is 100% spot on, Greg. The problem with that is the same problem if you're a hockey team and you have 2 goaltenders. The reason you have 2 goaltenders is because you don't have one.
Because you don't have one.
Right.
And if you are a football team and you got 2 quarterbacks, you got 2 quarterbacks because you don't have one. You don't have a clear-cut number one.
That's the same thing with platoons, right? You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have one platoon. Very rarely is someone going to be like the 93 Phillies, where you have 2 or 3
all over the field,
full-fledged platoons all over the field, right? But those are just a bunch of dogs, right? They're not made like that anymore, right? But like, you look at, like Tommy said earlier, you look at Brandon Marsh, Bryson Stott. You know, back in the day, you either could hit lefties or you couldn't. If you couldn't, you weren't here.
Right. And
you were going to be in the lineup till you could hit lefties, right? So platoons are kind of the same way, right? You have 2 right fielders because you don't have one. I wish we could go back to that. I wish baseball was like that. And you would think a guy like Thompson, being as old school as he is, would be like that. But he's not. I'm going to go by the matchups. I'm going to go, and for the most part, it works, right? Because it's just the way baseball is. But yeah, I wish it was. I wish it was old school. And yep, Jeff Hoffman, you're a ninth inning guy.
But I find it funny
if you don't win for a week, you don't pitch.
Right. I find it funny that no one tries it, no one does it, and yet the best teams in baseball feels like are all saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. We need the closer. How do you know you
got the last 3 outs?
Well, yeah. Well, how do you know you don't already have them? You have no clue because you don't put any faith or trust into them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Jack, I wouldn't hate I wouldn't hate Lou Bob. He might just be as expensive though as Miller, as I'm hearing, just because he's 26, super cheap contract. But he's another guy. He's always hurt. And I think I read Keith Rosenthal's The Bow Tie this week as I was golfing, and he mentioned that the White Sox might hold on to a guy like Lou Bob till the offseason because it probably does them more good for him to finish the year playing more than 100 games than it does to trade him now. They're thinking they might have more suitors in the offseason. So,
yeah. So, Greg, you mentioned 3 names. You had given us Kopech,
yep,
and then
Fairbanks and Adam.
And Adam. So I will tell you that I would absolutely go in on Kopech for the right price. Same thing with Fairbanks. Not so much sold on Adam.
Okay.
And
any price on Adam, or just you're not overpaying for him?
Not overpaying for him.
Yeah.
And I do think that, Fairbanks and Adam, I think Tampa might get a little greedy on them. It's funny because I had a buddy of mine who really wants to try to get his hands on Kirby Yates. And it's a good name. I just don't think they're going to part with him.
Is he in Tampa Bay as well?
No, Texas.
He's in Texas.
Yeah.
And that's where Lorenzen is. I know Luke's been on Lorenzen.
Yeah.
But they're right there on the cusp of, like we talked about the Mets, right? They're right there on the cusp of trying to figure out what they're going to do.
Yeah, and they're also a year removed from winning the World Series, so they're not necessarily looking to do a fire sale.
But I heard like Nathan Eovaldi might be available. So if they do make him available, maybe to your point, Mike, Kirby Yates is somebody that would be available.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like Yates better than I like the two guys from Tampa, but I like Kopech a lot, actually.
Yeah, Kopech, and he's got experience as a starter as well. So if you get him in here and you like him, then there's always that possibility that he potentially goes back.
Yeah, down the road. Yeah.
Yeah. Jack, if the Phillies get Lou Bob, would you keep Rojas or Marsh? I have a feeling if they get Lou Bob, Rojas is in the deal.
Yeah, I think that's
probably
accurate.
That's probably going to be. I'm not saying he's going to be the lead guy in the deal, but that would be Chicago's, in theory, replacement for Lou Bob,
at least for the rest of this year.
And then it frees up him to go play, right? Because then what's Rojas going to do? Go back to AAA and tease everybody, right? Like, and then we know what happens when he comes up. So if you do that deal, I think he's in the deal. Marsh stays to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's accurate.
And this will be the last Phillies one, then we'll jump over to some Eagles talk for the last couple minutes. Do you think the Phillies would trade Garrett Stubbs? No. They had to be honest with you though, Jack, they had the opportunity when Real Muto came back, and they played their card there, right? And I think they played the right card. I have no issues with Garrett Stubbs, but they played their card. They decided that Garrett Stubbs is the backup catcher, and rightfully so. Rafael Marchand should be getting everyday at-bats in the minors. And then I think Stubbs is only on a one-year deal anyway. Marchand is your backup next year.
Right.
And there's no harm in that, but there's no shot they're trading Garrett Stubbs, to be honest.
No, and you're spot on, Greg. It's funny because we had somebody earlier talking about, the casuals who just look at the standings.
Yeah.
I get a kick out of the casuals that lose their minds over the fact that Marchand got sent back down over a guy like Stubbs, when you want Marchand getting those at bats every single day, because if something does happen to JT, he's going to be the one to come up and probably be the full-time guy through the playoffs.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that back and forth, every game, every other game, like they did when JT was out.
Yeah.
Come playoff time, that's Marshall.
Especially because he's a switch hitter. You don't have to.
Exactly.
All right, fam, we're going to transition to a little Eagles talk. We're at 15 likes on YouTube. Get us over 20. Let's go. Actually, I got one more question for you guys before we go, Philly Eagles. 3 names. Do they stay or go? Vlad Guerrero.
Stay.
They
got to market somebody over there.
True. Tariq Skubal.
Go
As well, Luke?
Sure, yeah.
Justin Steele.
Go.
Interesting. I think all 3 of them go, to be honest with you. I think all 3 of them go. The only one I think would stay is Justin Steele.
Oh,
just because
really?
I think the Cubs are closer to contending than any of the other teams, so it probably behooves them to sign him.
I think that there is an absolute mutiny in Toronto if they move Vlad.
Well, he's going into his last year of his deal, and he
I
hasn't
think
been very
maybe
good.
a team like the Yankees look at him like they called up this guy.
You know where I think he's perfect? Pittsburgh needs an everyday first baseman, and I thought it was going to be the polar bear, but then the Mets started playing well because I don't think the Mets want to pay Alonso, so I think that made sense. But now I think it's Rosca. I'll entertain you for this one. He's not going to the Angels. He's not. What up, Dynasty?
Nobody's going to the Angels.
No one's going to the Angels. Nobody.
The Angels aren't even going to the Angels.
Hit that like, hit that subscribe.
Mike Trout's not even going to the Angels. He can't.
Yeah, he faked another injury.
Yeah.
Eagles training camp opens. Does that do anything for you guys anymore?
No. I don't really even sweat it until they get that first preseason game.
Yeah. I used to get all up in training camp, right? I used to really enjoy it. Obviously, probably used to look forward to this day and probably celebrated it back in the day. But then when you look at what the business of the NFL has become, and you just realize that it just doesn't matter, right? It's just like the players don't treat it like it matters. Why should me as a fan treat it like it doesn't matter? And I don't sit there and trash anybody that does like it. I just get out of training camp healthy. That's all I care about. Just get out of training camp healthy. But where it really lost it for me is what was it, Chip Kelly when he left Lehigh?
Yep.
Right when
you absolutely have to get out of my head because you and I are we might be sharing fat guy brain right now.
And I didn't even go up that often, right? I didn't even make that trek that often, but it was that allure, right? It was that allure, and probably outside of a couple of years, right? We had direct baseball to watch, right? I'm a baseball junkie, so if the Phillies are good, don't even bring up the Eagles to me, right? I get in fights at Citizens Bank, not really, but I yell at people at Citizens Bank Park for starting an Eagles chant. I hate that. That annoys the shit out of me, especially when they're playing well. If they're a last place team, Eagles chant all day you want, right? But especially after what the Eagles did, right? You get a collapse, you're still chanting Eagles? Get the hell out of here. But yeah, when you left Lehigh, you just completely just took the enjoyment from a fan standpoint out of it, right? The allure of putting these guys in a college dorm, you know what I mean? 2 days, 3 days, making them truly work. Now we got no pads ever. We got no tackling practices. Just get out healthy.
Yeah, and it actually used to be tradition, for me and some of my friends, and I know a lot of people. It was always the first Saturday of training camp. They didn't give them off on the weekends the way it's, the way it is kind of evolved now.
Yeah.
The first Saturday of training camp was a 2-a-day. And we would be down at Westchester or up at Lehigh, and we were making a day of it.
Yep.
We were going up, watching the morning practice, leaving, going and getting lunch and beers somewhere, going back and watching the afternoon practice, and then, make the trek home.
And sweating about as much as the players.
Exactly. And to your point, when they brought it in-house to the NovaCare complex, it definitely took a lot of the allure away from training camp. And then I think for me, when I started working NFL games, I actually wound up getting my first 4 NFL game assignments today.
Okay.
That was bigger to me than
training camp,
than the start of training camp. Yeah.
Where are you headed?
I will be in Philly, New York, and Washington with the Cowboys, and Baltimore with the Raiders.
Oh, okay.
And then there's also a good possibility I may be in New York and Baltimore again with the Broncos. So the calls are starting to come in now that the schedule is the broadcast schedule is starting to get locked.
Starting to get released.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I want to read you guys something real quick, and I want to
go for
know if you guys caught this. This was the Jeremy Fowler tweet from yesterday.
Definitely didn't see it.
Eagles DB Cooper DeJean will begin camp on NFI and will be sidelined. Sidelined. That's legitimately 2 words there. Sidelined. 3 weeks with a hamstring injury suffered when he was caught in an awkward position during off-season training, per a league source.
Weird. Saw that.
It is unrelated to any prior injury. The Eagles are confident in a quick recovery and that he will contribute as expected this season. Can someone explain to me what that awkward position might be?
Very weird.
I mean,
I strain a hamstring getting out of bed sometimes, but I'm not an athlete.
Is the Rook spending his time between mini camp and training camp on Delaware Ave? I mean, what are we doing here?
Oh my goodness, that's interesting. I saw that he was going to miss part of camp, but I didn't see the reasoning why. That's pretty funny.
I saw that tweet and I was just like, wait, what?
That's awesome. Jack, I don't think the Eagles overpaid. They had the money. And you can look at the reaction to the videos that the Giants had when they went in. And I love the fact, right? You look at it, you looked at the contract. It was only $1 million guaranteed more than what the Giants were offering. And what, $500,000 on the annual yearly amount, right?
Yeah,
so
and he did
the
not
Giants
report
were going
back.
to offer it anyway. So
He did not report back. And the other point why we didn't overpay is because he's not a running back here. He's a weapon here.
Yeah.
So you can talk about overpaying running backs however you want. This isn't like him playing, Christian McCaffrey on Carolina. This is different. This is a team that can afford him, that's already good enough, and can go into a season and get better. So it's not paying a running back. You're paying a weapon. It's totally different.
Yeah, it's not Christian McCaffrey on Carolina. It's Christian McCaffrey on the 49ers.
Right. Sure. I was just saying, if I was Carolina or even New York, I kind of see why a general manager wouldn't want to do it, but you don't got to be, a dick about it and pretend like you want to pay him when you never were going to.
Right.
And now you just look like an idiot. Like, there's no need for that.
No,
I personally find it funny when you talk about training camp, though, if we want to get into this conversation. Yeah. I understand it because all the money is in the quarterback and the coaches, and they bring in a big new name in Saquon. All the eyes, all the money, all the attention's on the offense. I look right on the other side of the ball because as bad as that was on offense, it was arguably even worse on defense. It was just as bad against really bad teams. Arizona, if you remember that horrible game. So
I think they didn't punt the whole game.
Right. I look at this season. And when people are bringing up names right now in training camp as we're getting closer, everyone's talking about how Jalen, it's his year, or Saquon, one addition, or AJ and Devontae and Dallas Goedert and the new offensive lineman without Kelsey. My eyes go on the defense. So I was just going to ask you guys if there's going into the year, kind of going back to that discussion, a breakout player.
No, I don't know if it's breakout, but you said Jalen, and I immediately thought Jalen Carter.
Right. Okay.
Like,
I like that.
I think this is the year where he may wind up going all pro. Like if he gets any help on that defensive line from Jordan Davis at all, I think Jalen Carter just is an absolute breakout stud this year.
I'm gonna go right off your point. My breakout guy, because I do think he's going to break out if it wasn't Jalen Carter. I don't even look at Jordan Davis. I'm looking at Milton Williams.
Yeah,
I have a ton of faith.
Totally
in him.
Good with that.
I think a lot of names are on Jordan Davis. Obviously, he's the first round pick. I understand that. And in running down situations, I think he could be relied upon in that matter. But I look at Milton Williams more so as a reliable every down defensive lineman. And not enough conversation is on this defensive line who was average at best last season in a team that really prioritizes production in this group. And you're also talking about a group. Yes, they brought in Bryce Huff. That's great. You're talking about a group that lost a guy who's on a short list of people who have 25 sacks in the last 2 seasons. And they're all right for not paying him because we cannot deal with a holdout in Philadelphia market. That would be all hell's broken.
Yeah, we dodged a bullet there for sure.
So I'm cool with getting rid of him. But I'm just saying, just because he's gone and that might be the right move doesn't mean, no one's got to step up. Someone's got to step up.
I like your Williams, too, because he wants to get paid, right? I think he signed a 1-year deal just because he didn't like what he was getting out on the market, or he's in the last year of his deal. It's one of those two. But he wants to get paid, naturally. They all do, right? So I think to your point, I think he's going to be in a good situation to show that he can be that guy and that he can get paid. Dynasty is with you. He said he likes Milton in the 3-4. I'm going to go. Dynasty was in my head. I'm going to go Nakobe Dean.
It's funny because I saw Dynasty say that, and I think Dean is a great name, but he's got to prove to me that he can stay on the field.
Well, that's my biggest thing. It's not even necessarily talent. You got to prove that you can be on the field. Because I think on the field in a 3-4, we ought to remember too. We're going to a new defense, right? So Luke, I'm so glad that you said, hey, let's go heavy, look heavy on the defense for training camp because it's a whole new system.
Right.
Yeah, I think the Kobe Dean has to be up there in one of those breakouts because he just got to be on the field first of all, and that to me would be a breakout. Play 12 games to Kobe.
Well, I do think the one advantage that they might have with him is if they're going to the 3-4 and they're going to have that that one linebacker sort of over the ball.
Yeah.
My guess is that that's going to be Devin White.
Yeah.
And they're gonna move Nakobe off ball.
Yeah.
And if Nakobe is off ball, that's where he thrives.
Agreed.
If you try
get him
to play
in space.
If you try to play him in the middle in a 4-3 and he can't move, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You can't even see over the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do agree. I do think Devin White is going to be a problem for us. Again, 26-year-old guy who everyone in the league thinks he's done. Has played a hell of a lot of big-time football over his career, even when you go back to LSU and Tampa Bay. I think he's got something left, and I think he's on a mission. That's another good name, Greg. Thank you for bringing that up.
I can see this team doing a lot of things very similar to when they won the Super Bowl in 2017, where they brought in a lot of guys on prove-it deals.
Yep.
And those guys busted their asses.
100%, Mike.
Wound up winning a Super Bowl and then went elsewhere and got paid.
Yep.
And it's like how we almost went back to the formula.
Yep. What was that? You look at LeGarrette Blount, right? Even it was a trade, but J.H.I., Chris Long, Patrick Robinson or Peterson or whatever that nickel corner we had. I always get his name wrong.
You're right, Patrick Robinson.
Yeah. But you're absolutely right. Those guys, they were the biggest producer, not the biggest, but they had some huge moments for us because they were on prove-it deals.
Yeah, I mean, Torrey Smith.
He finally caught one ball. The biggest YOLO ball that Foles ever threw. He caught it off the dude's knee.
And to that point, another week we're on here, another week Justin Simmons is still available. I feel like the longer he's out there, especially after training camp, familiarity with a guy like Fangio, that would make a ton of sense as someone who can make a high impact. Especially, I get it, they've addressed it, but until it's actually proven on the field, I don't trust that the secondary is actually 100% ready to go going into the season, especially after weird off-season practices, movements, whatever you want to call it, with Cooper disease.
Awkward situations.
Yeah, awkward. Yeah, we don't need that.
So I'm still all in on Justin Simmons, by the way. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's just doing that crafty veteran thing where he has told teams, look, I'm in shape and I'm ready to go, but I ain't coming to training camp. Y'all need to call me somewhere around the end of August.
Yeah. Well, and that was going to be my question. Like, everyone knows, obviously, he can play, right? He's not like an old, aging vet, right? He's been in the league a minute, but it's not like he's, in Ndamukong Suh and stuff like that, where they're just completely taking the first half of the year off, right? And more power to you. But why? There's got to be a reason why he's still out there. And maybe that is, right, Mike, right? Maybe it is just hey, call me mid-August. I'm not making any plans till mid-August. Because obviously every team has always will have a needed safety.
Right.
And it's so if we're not the only ones, I don't want to say ignoring him, but ignoring him, right? So it's interesting that he's still available. And Johnny, no, I don't think, as we were just discussing, I don't think Howie's done. I don't know that Mac is necessarily a target, but
too much money anyway.
I do know the
That's
Chargers
a high
are
ticket price item.
The Chargers are trying to shed cap, so I do know that.
Yeah, that's too much money to bring on anyway. What I found interesting today in just the reports, I'm not somebody who listens too closely to these reports and talking about like a 6th-round edge rusher becoming Reggie White. I'm not into that. But what I will say is what I found interesting in the reports today was the first team secondary that was out there day one. Obviously, things can change. It's so early. Yep. But day one, it was Slay, which you expect to be out there. Isaiah Rodgers, who has a ton of hype going into the season. Yep. And then in the slot was a guy that we all thought wouldn't be back. Then he comes back on a cheaper deal in Maddox.
Yep.
Their first-round pick isn't even out there right now. And maybe, obviously, they might just be slowly developing him, letting him get to that spot eventually. Maybe they hope he gets there by week 1. But we are in a totally different world, at least entering the season, where last year was like searching for anybody who can play the position. Now we have first-round picks sitting out and watching the first group go.
So I'm going to have to assume, though, then the safeties were probably CJ, GJ, and Reed Blankenship.
Yep.
Which means
that's your starters to me.
Right. Which means that Bradbury is not only no longer playing corner, but he got moved to safety, and he's not even a top 3-4 safety.
Possibly.
I mean, I legitimately think they're just trying to showcase him at safety during training camp to try to get something for him.
Yep.
And position it to teams that he could play corner or safety. I just think that they're done.
Or they're
with
waiting
him.
For someone in Arizona to go down so they could trade him to what's his face? Gannon.
They're done. Yeah, they're done with him. They just don't want to cut him and eat the money.
Yeah, exactly. I do know they really like Isaiah Rodgers, right? And the one thing too, as a fellow degenerate, always bet on the degenerate to make a comeback. Right, so he needs more cash to start betting again, right? He needs more. So
ebbs and flows. Let's get it.
He wants that next contract, but he had a lot of bright spots and good play in Indianapolis. We'll see what the year off. But even in the last year, I do know that they really do like those kids too. When you talk about Job, you talk about Ringo, you talk about even McPherson. They do like those kids. So I think they really like their cornerback room and their secondary. I think they think they're in a really good spot heading into, a full-fledged preseason and the regular season.
Yeah, I love Ringo. I've always loved Ringo. He's a 5-star recruit out of college or coming out of high school. In college, absolutely balled out. And the reason he fell to the 4th round, a lot of people think was because he screwed up some drill in a combine that he'll never have to do on a football field. So, so I'm in love with Ringo. I think he should get more playing time. And now it seems like in a crowded room he won't. But all my attention going
they're
back
going to play. They're going to play. We know this. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Maddox will get hurt by week 3. You book that.
I think Maddox just got hurt walking in the shower the other day.
Yeah.
Right? He was put in a weird stretching position.
Yeah,
Maddox sneezed and pulled a ribcage muscle. Like it just happens.
Going back to the defensive line, though, I can't stress enough. I don't think this gets enough noise at all. How important this is. The Huff moves reminds me, ironically, a lot with what they did with Hassan Reddick when he first came in here, right? It was kind of revamping, retooling that defensive line, and they brought in a guy that made sense, had some bigger seasons, was young, up and coming, and then he broke out here, it seemed like, on a very good team. But what it kind of went undervalued, even though he was so great, how much he took that next step so quickly and how much that, impacted us going to a Super Bowl and being seen as contenders the next year. We need a big time year from Bryce Huff because he's getting paid the same way or a similar way that Hassan Reddick was getting paid. They need a big time year, not like another step. Oh, he's still young. We'll look towards next year. He needs to be a dog like day one.
And you can add Nolan Smith to that too.
Yeah,
that's another guy.
I always forget about it. Yeah,
that's sitting there and I know it's still now we're going to year 2 for him, but it's start to get put up or shut up time, right? Because I like the kid. He's pretty vocal though, and you got to put something down. I'm guessing that's AJ Brown starts at the pup. I'm not worried.
No, Sidney Brown.
Sidney Brown. Good call, Johnny. Yeah, he's gonna be out probably half the year.
It's another guy. Some of these guys they don't have room for all these guys on the team.
Yeah. Well, that's where he used the pup and then you
get stashed on the pup. Yep.
Yeah. All right, guys. Any final thoughts?
Reggie Jackson.
I like that move.
Let's go.
I like it.
No need to get into it. But
but it's a good bench piece.
2019. Let's go.
Good bench piece, right?
Love it.
I definitely do like that. The Sixers are definitely a much improved roster, it looks like. And we'll see what the final looks like because just like Howie Roseman's not done tinkering, we know Daryl Morey's not done tinkering at all.
Here's my bold prediction for you. The U.S. does not win a gold medal.
That's not a bold prediction, Mike.
Sorry. It's a spoiler.
Sorry to break it to you.
I'm on the other side with this one. I'm not going to lie.
I won't watch a minute. Won't watch a minute.
I'm not going to lie. Kevin Durant's arguably the most historically great Olympian of all time, considering how many times he's played. Obviously, that has a lot to do with it. But once he comes back, different look with this whole team. They're missing him a lot. He's an all-time great.
Thanks for chiming in, Johnny. See you, brother. All right, gentlemen, let's get out of here. Each Wednesday night, we are brought to you by Bajier's Bread, located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Home of the best stuffed breads, tomato pies, cutlets, sandwiches, meatballs. Mention A2D Radio. Give them 10% off. They got a new location. Go Google them. Go up there. Seriously, they got good-ass food.
Anybody who's going to take the time to put cutlets in the read,
you got to go.
If you got cutlets in your read, forget about it. You got to go.
You got to go get them. That's Mr. Mike Mataraki. That's Luke Brown. I'm Greg Malachvik. Tommy Arnone was with us for a couple minutes. We will see you guys next week. Phillies host the Guardians and the Yankees before we are on next. We will obviously dissect both of those next week, as long as I'm sure we'll get a little bit more Eagles talk as training camp continues. Thank you, everybody. On your way out, make sure you hit that like, hit that subscribe. We'll talk to you next week.